The faithful wife test. Where do I start? Looking back, I think it all started with a business lunch. No, that's not true. It all started with my parents. You see, my parents, Jack and Barb, raised 4 children. I'm Jason, the oldest, then Jennifer, Katie, and Dylan, the youngest. We all had wonderful childhoods, so it makes it even harder to explain what happened. My parents gave us a great life, a good education, summers any child would die for, and all the love we could ever want. When we were little, they hosted all of our friends. Our house became a gathering place for all the neighborhood kids, and my parents always made sure everyone had fun food and cold drinks. As we got older, the parties and get-togethers began. My parents welcomed a seemingly endless parade of girlfriends and boyfriends, and when we got married, they lovingly embraced our spouses and treated them as their own. Here's the thing about my parents. They had no sons and daughters-in-law, no daughters and sons-in-law. They only had sons and daughters. When we married, the family grew larger. Our spouse's parents became the best friends my parents ever had. Their other children were like sons and daughters to us, brothers and sisters we never saw often enough. There was always enough love for everyone, and no one was second best. That's how the 4 sisters came to be. One would think that anyone raised in such an atmosphere should understand the value of love, trust, faith, and loyalty. 3 of us did. Katie, for some reason, didn't. She hid it well. I'll grant you that. We never found out what she was capable of until 8 years after she was married. But even then, her true colors were revealed only gradually, partially, until the 3 of us pieced it all together and saw the depth of her betrayal. Kathy married a great guy. His name is Bob. I know. How many Bobs do you know who would be Mr. Excitement? He's not the kind of guy who plays the role of an animal. He is a solid, reliable, and devoted husband who tells good jokes, takes care of his family, and honors his commitments. Bob is an accountant who does the bookkeeping and brews his own beer in his basement. His idea of a good time is grilling meat on the back deck, playing with the kids before bed, and slowly sipping 1 beer after they go to bed. He helps wash the dishes, keeps the house in order, and loves his wife. No, he's not Mr. Excitement, but he's a great husband and father. I'm an investment banker, also not the most energizing man at the party, but I exercise and run regularly. I'm not trying to maintain relief. I just want to stay healthy. Dylan works out with me. Since he's younger, his job is to act like a rabbit, and I try to keep up with him and fail miserably. Jennifer is more aerobic and focuses more on figure than strength, but she trains with light weights. I made sure she knew how to throw punches and take care of herself from an early age. This led to one incident on the playground when young Dylan was bullied. But that's a story for another time. As I said, it had been 8 years since Kathy and Bob had been married when the truth was revealed. I was across town meeting clients for lunch. We were in one of those places that has a divided dining room. Kathy walked in there, under the arm of a costume designer I didn't recognize. I smiled when I saw her and started thinking, how could I surprise her? Then, when they reached their table, she turned and kissed him. She nestled her lips against his and lingered on them. My stomach churned and my appetite was gone. I watched their body language for a while, and if the kiss didn't say it loud enough, it soon became clear that this was no innocent dinner. Eventually, my companions caught my attention, and I tried to resume my meal in such a way that it wasn't obvious that I was watching Kathy and her companion. I did not succeed. Earth to Jason? What's going on? You barely touched your lunch. Oh, sorry, I got distracted. I'm trying to figure something out. Can we help? I finally noticed they were looking in Katie's direction, trying to figure out what or who had caught my attention. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. How's lunch? Done, at least we're done. I'm sorry. That's okay. We can sit around while you eat. We'll entertain you with the latest predictions for the future of hog farming. No, one word. Plastic. That joke never gets old in the investment business. It can't get old either. It was old when it started, and it remains old today. No, I've lost my appetite. I'm ready. We dropped our obligatory 20s and headed for the cars. Thankfully, the path to the door didn't take me past my sister's table. I needed time to think, and I thought about it all day. When I got home in the evening, I kept thinking about it. After dinner, when the little ones had already gone to bed, my wife came into my living room. The TV was on, but I couldn't tell what the program was. I wasn't watching it. She sat down next to me. "So, my husband, how are you doing?" Carol wasn't the kind of person who liked to chat about nothing. "What?" No one ever accused me of being quick to respond. "What's on your mind, mister? Spit it out." "Oh, nothing." How's that for a brilliant answer? Start talking, or you'll sleep all night with my legs behind your back. Now, for single guys, there's something you need to know about wives. Their hearts may be warm, and their kisses may set you on fire, but their feet are cold as ice. Don't ask me to explain it, but every married man knows it's true. You've been sulking all evening, and I want to know why. Is it because of something I did? Is it a problem at work? Talk to me. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and exhaled. I saw Katie today. Is she okay? She's fine, but I didn't like what I saw. And what did you see? She walked into a restaurant with a man, and it wasn't a professional dinner. He put his arm around her as she entered the restaurant. She gave him an obviously unprofessional 3 Mississippi kiss on the lips and spent the entire lunch catching his every word. Are you sure? I recognize a date when I see one, and this wasn't their first date. Are you sure it was Katie? I recognize my sister when I see her, plus she had an asshole Cupid tattoo on her arm. How many of those have you seen on women who are my sister's twin? After that, we both just sat in silence. Neither of us wanted to think, much less say what was going to happen next. The silence was broken by Carol. Do you think she's cheating on Bob? If she isn't, she's thinking about it. In any case, what I saw didn't pass the wife test. Any chance it's Bob's long-lost cousin? We've met all his cousins. We've met most of his childhood friends. I don't see how it could be any different than we think. I don't want to think that. It has to be something else. Are you going to ask her? What am I going to ask? Kathy, are you leaving Bob? Are you having something on the side? Is that something I should ask her? Well, I wouldn't phrase it that way. There's no good way to say it. Even if we're right, there's a price to pay. If I'm wrong, I don't even want to imagine how this conversation will end. If you're wrong, you apologize. If you're right, you pounce on her and read her a requiem prayer. She's a married woman. She's not supposed to be dating and kissing other men. I need to think it over. I'm not ready to do anything yet. We spent the rest of the evening just sitting together, ignoring the TV and thinking about the possibilities. That evening, I said more than one prayer of thanksgiving for having a loving wife who I could trust with all my heart, who could give me advice when I needed it even when I didn't want it, and who maintained the happy, loving peace in our home that I cherished. The next morning, I went to work, still thinking about my problems. It was an impulsive decision. But about a half hour before lunch, I grabbed a sandwich from the deli downstairs, jumped in my car, and parked in the parking lot across the street from where my sister worked. I sat low in the seat, ate my sandwich, and watched her door. At 5 minutes to noon, she walked out the door wearing the same suit, gave him a clearly inappropriate kiss, got into the passenger seat of his car, and drove away. I lost my appetite, wrapped up the rest of my sandwich for later, and headed to work. I texted my wife. She's doing it again. Carol's reply was short and to the point. This can't be happening. We talked at home and came to the only possible solution. I would talk to Kathy directly, try not to put her on the defensive, and ask her what was going on. On Sunday, like any other Sunday, the family gathered at my parents' house. Sunday dinner wasn't just any dinner. In our family, Sunday dinner is an event. It marks the end of one week and the beginning of the next. It is a time for celebration, fellowship, and socializing. It was a reaffirmation of the family bond, and as is often the case, the parents of the couple were also there. This meant that the dining room table was the adults' table. The kids' table for people my age was set up in the living room, and the grandkids ate in the basement. Don't ask. As long as my parents are alive, my generation will be kids. I found a few minutes when my sister was alone and asked her to walk with me. On the way out of the house, I caught my wife's eye and we nodded to each other. It was a beautiful evening for a walk, and I hoped I wouldn't be limping when I got back. We walked for about 5 minutes, talking about work and the kids. And finally, I asked a question. Katie, I had lunch at the Brown Bull last Tuesday and saw you with a man I didn't know. I have to say that I was very uncomfortable with what I saw. I was especially uncomfortable with the kiss you gave him. It wasn't very womanly of you. I couldn't finish the sentence. What am I? Am I cheating on Bob? No, are you crazy? And who are you to stick your nose in my business? I'm not cheating. Frank is just a friend from work, that's all. Is that how you make out with all your friends from work? That was definitely 3 Mississippis on my lips. Okay, I was starting to get a little turned on. I never responded to lies, and her response turned on my delusion meter. Are you spying on me? Are you clean as a whistle? Do you take the husband test all the time? I'm not spying, but I am clean, and I hope I pass the husband test. I can tell you that since the day I met Carol, I've never kissed any woman the way you kissed this guy. What is wrong with you? You keep your nose out of my business. With those words, she turned and walked back into the house, without me. I know my sister, and she was acting like a sinner. I followed her and entered the house a few minutes after her. All the way home, I walked slowly, so that I would have time to think and replay the whole conversation in my mind. No matter how I parsed it, I came to the same conclusion, and I felt very uncomfortable. I've already told you that in my family, my spouse is family too. I wouldn't watch my sister cheat on her husband, and I wouldn't watch him cheat on her, but what if I'm wrong? I could do a lot of harm if I'm wrong. Could it be that what I got from my sister was just anger at me blaming her where it sounded like guilt? For the rest of the evening, she stared at me silently and angrily, and on the way home, I informed my wife. You should not go to your brother-in-law or whoever and say, I think your wife is cheating on you, and you certainly shouldn't do that when you don't have proof. And here's the other thing. I didn't want proof. I didn't want to know that my sister was capable of such a thing. If I was right, I wouldn't be popular in the family. If I was wrong, I'd be humiliated for a long time to come. A few weeks passed, and it was Dylan who broke the impasse. We were at my house on a Saturday afternoon, sitting on the back porch drinking beer when he said, Jace, I need to tell you something. I looked at him, not expecting an answer. I was sure I was the only person who suspected Katie, so I assumed Dylan had a problem of his own that he needed help with. I wasn't entirely wrong. I saw Katie in town last Saturday. She was with some guy and they looked a little too cozy. Too cozy. I was about to call out to her, but their body language told me to keep my mouth shut. Then she put her arms around him and gave him a very feminine kiss. The problem is, it wasn't Bob. How sure are you? I know my own sister. I'm beginning to wonder if we know her. Dylan looked at me as if I needed to finish that statement. I saw her a few weeks ago when she was having lunch with a guy. You're right. She failed the wife test badly. We both just sat there, silent, barely drinking, until Carol and Gloria called us in to eat. Gloria is Dylan's wife, and I love her like a sister, but you already know that. I had already told Carol about my suspicions and wondered if Dylan had told Gloria. It didn't take me long to wonder. After dinner, Dylan and I were sitting in the living room when Dylan quietly asked me, Did you tell Carol about Kathy? Yes. There are no secrets here. Besides, I needed her advice. And what did she say? She said I needed to talk to Kathy. And did you talk? Yes. Remember that walk she and I took a few Sundays ago? Dylan nodded. Remember how she got home a few minutes before I did? Dylan took a long, deliberate breath. That didn't go so well. When Carol and Gloria returned to the room, Dylan took the initiative. James knows. She looked at both of us. You told him? Yes, but he already knew. I saw her acting exactly the same way a few weeks earlier. For a while, we all sat in silence. The silence was broken by Carol. I guess that's what they mean when they find themselves between hammer and anvil. Gloria replied, and damned if you do, and damned if you don't. The conversation continued in silence that evening. In the end, the only solution we could come up with was that we turn to our sister, Jennifer, and have an intervention. Carol and Gloria would instruct Jennifer before the event. We briefly discussed who should participate, but agreed that it would be best if the women talked to Kathy privately. The husbands will take the kids to the zoo for the day to clear the house. Carol called Kathy that same evening. She and Gloria asked Kathy to come to our house the following Saturday to bake and spend the day together, but she blew them off. Then they suggested the following Saturday, but Kathy only replied, maybe. We'll see. She said she already has a date with her girlfriend for a shopping trip next week and can't break it. How much do you want to bet her girlfriend has a boyfriend? Jason, the kids are in the house. Well? She didn't answer my question. No one doubted I was right, and the idea of an intervention was struggling to gain momentum. The following week, Carol and Gloria met with Jennifer and told her what we knew. There had always been a certain amount of tension between Jennifer and Kathy. Jennifer may not have been the most patient big sister in the world, and Kathy was a bit of a nerd, which younger sisters can be. But this news threw Jennifer off balance. She felt like going to Kathy's house and giving her a scandal in front of Bob. It took several hours to talk her out of it and get her cleaned up. It would have likely meant the end of Kathy's marriage. And that's exactly what we were hoping to prevent. Bob isn't stupid. He's just gullible, as most good husbands are. If things didn't change, the day would come when he would find out, and neither of us knew what would happen then. It took several weeks and many discussions between the wives until Kathy finally agreed to meet with the women on Saturday afternoon. With advance notice, Kathy had exhausted all excuses to avoid seeing her sisters, and the date was set. The following Saturday, a good 2 months after I first saw her at the bar, they got together to bake and socialize. I'm sure she wasn't expecting this turn of events. The women discussed at length how to proceed and decided that they would approach Kathy with love and forgiveness, but explicitly tell her that she was losing her marriage. If that didn't work, there was always Plan B. We called Bob and scheduled a Father's Day with the kids for that same Saturday. We went to the zoo, had lunch, and then hit a ball at the park. The kids were getting big enough to swing a bat, and they all, sons and daughters alike, needed practice. The day came, we loaded 4 groups of kids, fathers, and grandpa into 3 cars and headed to the zoo. The kids were thrilled with some of the animal activities, and when the big cats move around, it's always interesting, but there is nothing, absolutely nothing, that would cause a group of small children a bigger fit of giggles than watching big animals poop. Elephants, giraffes, or zebras. It doesn't matter. Large animals pooping was the hit of the day, which everyone reminisced about afterwards. The boys pointed fingers, and the girls pretended they were too old for such things, but they all thought it was the most memorable part of the trip. In retrospect, and yes, that's what I said, maybe we should have visited the zoo after lunch, because when lunchtime came, the adults weren't as hungry as they could have been. The smell of the elephant house stays with you. After a few ridiculously large burgers, which the kids ate with more enthusiasm than the adults, we headed to the park. Bob seemed as excited about the day as anyone, and I hoped this day wouldn't be the end of his joy. There were other families there with kids the same age as ours, so the practice turned into a pickup game that grew until we could get two nearly full teams. The kids had a lot of fun, the adults were exhausted, and the dads just sat on the grass at the end of the day wondering when we were going to get old. It really was a great day, but in the back of my mind, I kept wondering how many more days like this will we have. Meanwhile, the women were not enjoying their day as much as the men. Their day had started uncomfortably and was getting worse. One by one, the sisters arrived ahead of Katie as they planned and prepared to intervene. "We must speak to her with love," they said. "We can't judge. We're doing this for her, Bob and the kids. She has to realize that she can't be invisible and that there are consequences." "If Bob catches her, the consequences could be huge." "Yes, we're doing this for her, and we love her. We need to avoid blaming her. We need to tell her what we saw that bothers us and ask her to explain so we can understand. But we're not fools either. We can't just let her lie and pretend we believe her. No. We've seen too many things that don't stand up to a wife's scrutiny. What if she tells us she spent time with this guy, admits to kissing him, but claims it didn't go any further than that? Then we try to suggest to her that she's already gone too far and that she'd better end it now. We might believe her, but Bob won't. Whatever is going on, it has to end now." "I won't believe her. If she's not having sex with this guy, she's thinking about it. I'm a little ashamed to admit this, but if Jason caught me making out with some guy the way he caught her, he'd have me on my knees and clubbing my ass until I begged for his forgiveness." "Well, a little of that might be fun. Let's be honest." This elicited giggles from all the sisters. "Not the way he would have done it. Remember, no judgment. We love her, and if she won't admit it, there's always a plan B." "God, no, I hope not." "Well, you know what they say. If you act like a child, you should be treated like one." Let's hope it doesn't come to that. All the women agreed. The conversation turned to happier topics, and that's when Kathy appeared. "Okay, I brought chocolate chip cookies. And who brought the cheesecake?" That was a good sign. She was in a good mood. "Jennifer brought everything you need for cheesecake. Carol brought carrot cake, and I'll make 2 apple pies with rum raisin." "Oh, that sounds good. And who brought the wine?" "Here's my sister. Pour yourself a glass and try to catch up." For the first 30 minutes, the mood was uplifted. Katie relaxed, and everyone tried to create a warm and loving environment. Eventually, all good things come to an end, and it was time to talk. "Sis, we haven't been completely honest with you. We got together to bake, and the boys won't be coming home until it's dinner time. But the truth is, we're all worried about you. You were seen being too explicit with a man we don't know. There have been some very unladylike kisses and hugs, and the truth is we're all concerned. If anyone sees you and tells Bob, we're afraid of what might happen." "I can't believe you're doing this. Jason accused me of it, and I told him to keep his nose out of my business. And now you're all doing it too?" "We're all worried about you. Who else knows? I think you've blabbed to your husbands. Anyone else?" "Pretty much everyone." "Then I'll tell you the same thing I told Jason. Keep your nose out of my business. What I do and who I do it with is none of your business." With those words, she stood up to leave. The 2 sisters moved to block her path. "Katie, we only want to reason with you. You're playing with fire, and you could get burned." "Just stay out of my business. What Bob doesn't know won't hurt him, and if any of you ditches tell him, the consequences will be on your conscience." Now they were all raising their voices. "Why don't you just listen to reason? We don't want you or Bob to get hurt. Please talk to us. Try to see reason here. I'm not talking to any of you anymore. Get out of my way." With those words, she tried to push her sisters aside. "Then you leave us no choice. It's time for Plan B." "What Plan B?" With those words, all 3 women exclaimed together, "Mom, it's your turn." With those words, Barb came out of the kitchen to confront her daughter. The look of shock and fear on Kathy's face the sisters would never forget. "You told my mom?" "What choice did we have? She raised you better than that. If you won't listen to us, then you'll have to listen to her." Katie's face reflected a mixture of fear and anger. "Mom, you're not going to talk me out of this. I deserve it. And until Bob finds out, it doesn't matter." "What kind of tramps have you been hanging out with? Who's been filling your head with nonsense? Of course it matters. You took vows on your wedding day. They don't just apply to what Bob knows. There's something you do every day, all day, for the rest of your life. You promise to honor him. Are you honoring him by being promiscuous with other men? Are you turning down all the others or just the ones Bob knows about? I raised you better than that, young lady, and I expect you to be the wife you swore to be." "Mother, you won't talk me out of it. I won't be young forever, and in a few years, Bob will be the only man who wants me. I need to do this while I still can." "What you need to do is keep your lips to yourself and your knees together until you are alone with your husband. I will not tolerate that kind of behavior from one of my daughters, and I don't care how old you are, miss. Either you clean yourself up or I'm going to have to treat you like the naughty little girl you used to be." Katie smirked. That was a mistake, because daughters never smirked at their mother. "What are you going to do? Bring me to my knees. I'm not a little girl anymore." "No, you're not a little girl, and my knee isn't as strong as it used to be." And with those words, Barb nodded to the other women. "Girls, you know what to do." Carol and Gloria grabbed Kathy by one arm and began pulling her into the living room. Kathy resisted, and with a look of absolute determination, both sisters scooped Kathy up under their arms and led her frog-like to the middle of the room. Meanwhile, Jennifer pulled the bench they were using as a coffee table to the middle of the room and scrubbed its surface. They laid her sister on the bench facing the floor, and Carol grabbed her wrists to hold them above Kathy's head. Gloria and Jennifer took hold of her ankles, and before Kathy could do anything, she was prostrate on the bench. Barb walked over to her daughter with tears in her eyes. "I haven't had to do this in so many years, and I hoped I'd never have to do it again. You broke my heart, girl, but I have no choice. You've been acting like a spoiled little girl, and you need to be punished." With those words, she pulled up Katie's dress and grasped the waistband of Katie's panties and pulled them down, exposing her ass to the women. "No, you wouldn't dare. Mom, I'm a grown woman. You have no right to—" Kathy didn't have time to finish the sentence. Barb doubled the belt she had retrieved from behind the couch and swung it over her head, bringing it down on her daughter's ass. Special! The sound of the belt hitting her body was unmistakable. Katie screamed, "Ay! Mom, no, don't do it!" "Special!" Katie screamed again and started convulsing, tears streaming down her face. "Specnaz!" "God, Mommy, please stop!" "Oh, baby, this is hurting me more than it's hurting you." "Special!" Katie choked on her screams and couldn't get any more words out. Tears were pouring from her eyes all over her face. She was in pain, but even more humiliated. Finally, she managed to squeeze out, "Mommy, please." Now Barb was crying herself. She was in a lot of pain from what she was doing, but she felt she had no choice. She had raised her girls to be decent women, and this daughter had stumbled. Without a word, Barb swung her belt again. "Swat!" Katie's screams didn't stop. She turned into a child again, crying with despair and shame, begging for mercy and forgiveness. When it was over, Katie had lost all her strength. She was defeated and lay on the bench with her arms and legs down to the ground, shaking, with tears in her eyes and utter humiliation. The sisters gathered the ointment and lovingly began to apply the healing cream to her ass. Their hands were gentle, and there wasn't a woman in the room who didn't have tears in her eyes and on her cheeks. It was traumatic for everyone, but more so for Kathy and Barb. Barb thought she would never have to discipline her children again. During those difficult childhood years, she had looked forward to the day when she would have adult relationships with all of her children. And now it seemed to her that the chance to live that life with Kathy was gone. Katie would never forgive her for what she had done today, but if Katie put aside the disgusting behavior that had started it all, the sacrifice would be worth it. The room was quiet as the sisters tended to Katie's wounds, which had turned red from the blood that was tightening the injury. Eventually, the skin would heal. But would the heart heal? When there was nothing more the nurses could do, they carefully and gently pulled Katie's panties back into place, with the patient whimpering and her mother wailing. There was silence in the room. The nurses wanted to help Katie get up from the bench and sit in a chair, but no one knew if a chair would be appropriate under the circumstances. They wanted to talk to their sister, but no one knew where to start. Katie slowly got up from the bench, stood in the middle of the room looking defeated, and finally spoke. "Mommy, I'm so sorry. I never meant to disappoint you, and I don't want to do anything to hurt Bob. I'm so sorry. Can you forgive me?" With that simple confession, Barb reached out her arms, hugged her daughter, and asked for forgiveness. Barb's own heart was broken. She had turned her daughter into a crying child, begging her mother for forgiveness, and she felt guilty for her act. The women spent the entire day in a conversation that was quiet and thoughtful at first, each describing moments in her life that she deeply regretted. It was a time of confession and repentance. Eventually, as each bared her soul and told her story, the sadness dissipated. Forgiveness and understanding cleansed everyone, and over time, laughter emerged. In time, Katie became her old self again, and the tears she cried were now tears of joy at having sisters and a mother who had not given up on her. Under the harsh light of corporal punishment, she finally saw how her actions had led to the destruction of her marriage. She had risked everything for something that had no value. Katie was ashamed, but she felt loved and began the process of putting her foolishness behind her as her sisters and mother embraced her and reaffirmed their love for her. On Monday, she would talk to her lover and put an end to it all. There would be no more dinners, no more kisses, no more hugs, and she would certainly never go to that hotel room as they had planned. It was a close call for Katie, a near miss and a rescue before it was too late. She told her sisters and mother everything and received redemption in return. She was forgiven as she forgave them because she knew everything they had done was done out of love. Carol realized that the pain and humiliation she had endured today was nothing compared to what her actions would cause Bob if he ever found out about her behavior. She quietly prayed that Bob would never find out how close she had come to the ultimate betrayal and made a new vow to never disrespect him again. The cookies were still baking when the children came home with their fathers, tired after their adventures at the zoo and park. The chocolate chip cookies were done and quickly eaten with glasses of milk. The carrot cake was cooling and ready for frosting. The cheesecake was in the oven, and the apple pie with rum raisin will be served warm after dinner. The husbands, with the exception of Bob, were concerned about how the day had gone, but they didn't find out the details until after they got home and put the kids to bed. For now, they received only a nod or a wink from their wives and felt relieved. Two of the men were grilling hamburgers and sausages on the grill in the backyard while the others helped with salads, plates, and such. Bob noticed a tear in Kathy's eye, walked up behind her and hugged her, hearing only a short, quiet whimper from his wife. "Are you okay, baby?" "Yeah, I'm fine. Now." Kathy kissed her husband, smiled, and went back to work. All Bob knew was that he had a wife he loved, children who meant everything to him, and a life that any rich man would envy. He had it all, and he knew he would dedicate his life to his family to make sure they had everything they needed. Life was good. Very, very good. He would never know how close he came that day to losing it all, and how he dodged a bullet that could have destroyed everything he held so dear. For the entire next week, Katie wore nightgowns to bed and carefully hid her ass from her husband until the traces of her shame were gone. Then, without any warning and much to the delight of her loving husband, she pounced on him and wore him out so badly that he was late for work the next day. He did not complain. I told you at the beginning of this story that we never learned what Kathy was capable of. In retrospect, I guess that's not really true. We didn't know that there was a fear and pain in her that we didn't understand, and that caused her to do things uncharacteristic of the sister I knew. Without Bob's knowledge, Kathy went to therapy, and we did our best to comfort and support her. She overcame the fear of old age that had plagued her for some reason, and never again thought about the mistakes that had almost led to the demise of her marriage. The end! Subscribe to my channel. Thank you.